listeners, thank you so much for joining us tonight. We are thrilled to have Lorie Lewis Ham here, and she's going to be talking about the first book in our new series that hopefully all of you have read. If you haven't read it yet, be sure to read it. It's a cool, very cool book. There's so many aspects to it. In fact, coming up with questions tonight was so easy. I mean, I probably could come up with like 20 more. I finally just had to stop myself and go, okay, there's only so many aspects that we could talk about tonight. But there was just so many things I loved about it. I loved the theater. I loved the setting, the variety of people. Someone was a master gardener, which I like gardening, so that it just
animals.
Yes, yeah. The rat, the dog. Yeah. So we're going to talk about some of that tonight. And to tell you a little bit about Lorie, how I originally became acquainted with her through cyberspace was that she does a lot for the mystery writing community. And she posts reviews, she does a podcast, she's got an online magazine, and she had reviewed some of my books and things like that. And so when I saw that her book came out, I was like, yay, we've got to have her on the Book Warriors, and I can finally get a chance to pay this back.
Yeah, well, thank you.
Yeah, so that's kind of how this came to be. I see that Tracy's here, Carol's here. Hi, Tracy and Carol. So glad you guys joined us. They are two of our most prominent book warriors that are here. They like to party. They're here almost every time. I would guess
that they're here tonight.
That maybe there's a glass of wine next to them. I can't be sure about that, but I wouldn't doubt it. So on that note, we'll just launch right in. So it was interesting to read, about you at the end of your book. Some things I learned, some new things that you used to be, or you've done gospel singing with your family. That's really, really cool. And you also, of course, do the podcast that we talked about and the magazine and all that. So can you tell the Book Warriors a little bit about all that stuff and maybe sing something for us along your time?
I don't know about the singing anymore. I don't really. Well, I started singing when I was about 5 with my mom, just, mother-daughter banquet kind of type things in church. And we actually formed a group called the Lorie Lewis Family when I was about 12. And we won this contest here in Fresno, and we went back to Memphis and recorded an album and just kind of kept singing from then on, and traveled first in an RV and then in a bus.
Like the Partridge Family.
Yeah. and it's basically Southern gospel music, a little bit of a country flavor to it. And we recorded several albums. We had a radio program. We were on, I don't know if anybody here has heard of the Blackwood Brothers. We were on their TV program for a while.
Oh.
And then when I got married, I started doing some solo stuff and did that. My last solo CD I put out about 10 years ago. And I kept doing that some for a while, but really haven't for the last several years. And that's that side. Kings of Her Life is about to turn 12, I believe, in May. And it's an online magazine that I started while I was unemployed. And it just kind of turned into what it is now. Half of it's mystery and the other half is more local entertainment and animal rescue and stuff. And then the podcast kind of came out of the magazine. I combined the fact that we did local theater with mystery stories and first chapters read by local actors. So that kind of gives you a not too long of an overview.
I feel like such an underachiever.
I know. That's
been more than I expected. Yeah. So are your songs available somewhere like Spotify or something like that?
No. I wonder what's involved in doing that. I have to check into that.
Yeah, my son is on there. I don't think there's really all that much involved. The hard part's being discovered.
Yeah.
But I think you're creating an account and you upload your music, kind of like having a self-published book.
That is just so cool. I have no singing talent. I love to sing in the car, but I have no singing talent, so I'm always like,
like I said, that kind of went to the wayside. My heart has always been in writing, and you can't always keep doing everything.
Yeah.
Plus, my asthma got worse, so it got harder to sing.
Oh, no.
Beautiful air we have here in the valley. But, yeah.
Well, Carol, who's listening tonight, she is a songwriter, so.
I wrote most of the songs on my last CD I wrote.
Oh, that is so
cool. Okay, well, you need to, it's not available, right? Is it available anywhere?
In my closet.
You know, maybe you can offer one as a giveaway tonight.
Oh, I'd be happy to.
That'd be cool.
Yeah,
That'd be
I'd be
so
happy to.
cool.
Melissa's
Okay, and
sons are very musical.
Yeah. Yeah, I have stories about that, but I'll save that for another time. Lecha is here. So did I say I've said it over and over. I think that's pronounced correctly this time. Carol, Tracy, hey guys, thanks for being here. Lisa, thanks for being here. Hey Tanya and Shannon. Thanks
Tanya
for being
Campus,
here.
she's another mystery writer. I'm sure some of you have read her. Grace Topping, yay! We've got
Hi, Grace.
Right, so.
We're all here to celebrate you, Lorie. Okay, so tell us about the setting. So you've already mentioned the lovely air of Fresno and the Central Valley of lovely California. But you talk about the beach town of Air. Is that how you say it? Air?
Yes, it's Air. Well, that actually was where the first book with Roxy was originally going to be set when I first started, probably 10 years ago. And it's fictional. It's completely fictional. I kind of looked on a map and looked at an area near Santa Cruz that looked like you could put a little town, and there you go. So that's where that came in. And in the last book in my previous series, Roxy gets introduced, and they actually do go to Air for a little bit. So that's her background.
That's cool. Yeah, it reminds me a little bit of Santa Sofia, which is my fictional beachy coastal California town from my bread shop series. And I love writing these little coastal towns. Of course, we didn't get to see much of Air because then you took us straight into Fresno.
Yeah. Well, maybe she'll visit someday.
Yeah, yeah. So tell us about the tower. That's a pretty cool, place with lots of character.
Yeah,
I loved how, the thrift shops and just the coffee shops and all the things going on there. It was cool.
It's actually my favorite place to go. I have not been very much in the last 2 years, but it's where most of the theater takes place, not all of it, but it's pretty much, it is the hub of it. And it's a very historical area. Most of what's in the book is real. I have changed names of a few places, especially where the murder happened. I didn't know if they would be too thrilled to have the murder happen in their place, but it looks the same and it's located in the same place. Sadly, the bookshop isn't real. I wish it was. And the tea shop, again, just another name. And there's there's another restaurant that is completely made up. And even the apartment complex where they live is a real apartment complex, but I've never been inside of it. I just know what it looks like on the outside, and it doesn't have that name. But
creative license, right?
Yeah, but it's really my favorite place to hang out around here. It just has a whole different feel of anything else in the whole area.
It is amazing how little parts of a town can have their own personality that may have nothing to do with the rest of the place. Just something really very different, and how the people find each other who like to live a certain way.
Yeah. It's a very artistic community too. A lot of actors and musicians and singers and artists live nearby, so they can walk to the art galleries or the theaters.
Sounds like a great place to go.
That's the best thing to be able to walk. I loved when we lived in Denton, Texas, we were able to walk to the square and, not so artsy necessarily, but I just love having that walkability factor, which we don't have anymore. And, and different places are beautiful for different reasons, but I love that aspect. And I think that adds so much character to the story and to the series.
Well, that's kind of how they became the Tower District Mysteries. I was trying to think of what to call them. And I feel like the Tower District is really a character as much as everybody else is. And I've toyed with, and we'll see where the series goes, with maybe even having a book that features a different main character that has been introduced already, kind of switch it up a little and just have the Tower District be the
constant.
Yeah.
I
can see her cousin maybe being a main character.
Yeah.
Well, it's about time. He's existed since I was a teenager, and he's never managed to have his own book. He keeps being the sidekick kind of all of my books so far. So we'll see.
Isn't It's funny, isn't it, how these characters kind of wander around in our head, and sometimes they start kicking the inside of your skull going, hey, it's my turn. Give me this story.
Sounds like his time is here. His time is due.
So I'm interested in the theater aspect, and you already touched on that a little bit. And I did see in the acknowledgments that you thanked some people from the local theater there. So have you done any theater, or some of your family done theater?
Well, I got involved in theater when my kids were in high school, and they were involved in theater. And so I was pretty much the theater mom, and I learned a lot. And then the magazine reviews theater. So, I get it from that aspect too. My husband's even done a little bit of community theater as well. I got talked into being on stage once. One of the school shows needed somebody to play a preacher to perform a wedding ceremony. I got talked into it. But usually when I'm on stage, I'm either talking about books or singing. Theater, not so much.
Well, it rang really true. So I thought, there's got to be.
Yeah, definitely.
And I liked the aspect of how, a lot of the suspects were trained actors, so they could be pretending to be innocent. It's like, okay, the fact that you kind of couldn't read their emotions as well as you normally could with a suspect and try to figure that out. I thought that was a really clever ploy. It
adds a whole layer of having to, who's reliable, who's not, who can you trust, who can you not, who's real.
And Carol, who's here tonight, was an actress in college, and she's been in all kinds of things. She was even in a movie called I Was a Zombie for the FBI. That's kind of a cult classic. We watched that recently. It was really fun. And her mother ended up being in it too, had a scene. So it's funny. Yeah, mothers get pulled into things that kids do.
Oh, yes.
That's so funny. Hey, Heather. Heather's here from, what's the name of
hi, Heather.
I can't think of the name of the blog right now, or the Facebook group. What is it, Diane?
Cozy Launch something.
Yes, Cozy Launch Party. Cozy Mystery Launch Party. Yes. I'm going to be there Friday or Tuesday night. But this is my menopausal brain right here. Okay, Lorie. So Roxy has her start. We learned that she's a children's book author. So how did that come about? And you said that writing, is your first passion over singing. So have you written a children's book, or what's your connection to that?
I have not. That's another thing that just kind of developed when I originally started to write about her. Again, this is like 10 or 11 years ago. And she was going to be an heir. It was mostly going to focus on the animal rescue side of her life, because she ran a small animal rescue out of her home. And there were so many animal rescue books out there all of a sudden just popping up everywhere. It's like, well, I want to add something else to it. And it just seemed like a fun idea for her to feature one of her pets. Started out as a pet hamster and became a pet rat. For a children's book. So that's just kind of how that came to be.
Well, that segues right into our next question, which is about your personal experience with animal rescue. Because I know Melissa's got 3 dogs. I've got a bunch of dogs, a bunch of cats. And I know you've got
all rescued.
We have 5 cats, 4 dogs, a rat, and a rabbit. And everybody but the rabbit was rescued. But actually, when my oldest was in 4th grade, they had pet rats in their class. And then, of course, he wanted a pet rat. And I was like, oh, okay, you have to take care of it. I'm not going to have anything to do with it. Well, the rat got sick. And as you may know, mom's usually the one who takes care of those who are sick. And I fell in love. And they're just the most awesome pets. And I just kind of stumbled into doing a pet rat rescue for several years just because there was a need.
I didn't know that was a thing, honestly.
Yeah.
We had lots of pet rats, but they lived in our walls and in our attic.
Well, that's it's domesticated rats. Whole other species. Trust me.
Yeah, we had Texas roof rats.
Yeah, the whole other thing. I actually give a brief mention at the beginning of the book of a real rat rescue who has a column in Kings River Life. They're called Ratty Rats. And that's actually who I got my latest rat, Yuki, from this summer.
Cool.
Wow.
Yeah, I did that for a while, and then it got to be a bit much. And so I kind of gradually backed out of it. Every once in a while I'll still get somebody call me, and if I'm where I can, I might take, and just keep their rats for myself and take care of them. But I'm out of it other than adopting at this point, and the columns on Kings River Life.
And in your fiction.
Yes, of course.
Well, that's funny. We actually have a question here. So it's kind of harkening back to you talking about your characters telling you what to do. It says, do your book characters talk to you? And if they have you had to change something in the story because of it?
Good question.
I'm not sure I would actually say that they talk to me, but I will sit down and start writing, and they just kind of sometimes do their own thing. So in a way, yeah, there's been things come up, I'll just sit down and start writing, especially if I don't know specifically what I'm going to do in this scene. And it just kind of happens. They just start talking to each other and things come out of it. So yes and no at the same time.
That's cool.
That is, yeah. Okay, so the mafia connection. That's to me, that was so interesting because the setting is California, which is not what you typically consider mafia land. Yeah. And we're just now, for the first time, watching The Sopranos. We've tried several times and have never gotten into it. And now we're finally on episode 7 and we're getting a little bit invested. And the mob, actually, we're on the episode where, they're going to be indicted, and they're just talking so much about the mob as an entity and how it's kind of fading. But here it is, alive in California. So how did you get that idea, and how did you bring it to California?
Well, when I started creating Roxy's cousin, Stephen, I was a teenager, and I was fascinated by the mafia. And so I came up with the idea of having him have a mafia background. His father was supposedly retired from the mafia, and he has a very bad relationship with his father because of all that. And that just kind of grew out of that, and just researching it and studying it and being fascinated by it. It isn't a big thing out here, but it does exist. I've never met any, but I've done a lot of research, and even just recently went and did some more research just to make sure that there was still, that they're still out there.
Well, I was wondering if your title kind of tied into sort of these dualities that a lot of the character had, like One of Us. Almost everybody kind of has a double life. Like the actors are who they are in real life, and then who they're playing, and then are they playing a part when they're talking to them, when they're investigating. And then Roxy's got, she was a children's book author, but she's from the mafia, So it kind of duality. I mean, did the title have a deeper meaning in that regard, or am I?
It did in a sense. It kind of. I'm trying to think of how much I should say here in case there's anybody who hasn't read it.
Spoilers.
It ties into where the gossip website came from, and is that, like the person in the TV show where the idea for the gossip website came from. And if you've read the book and you're a fan of this show, you will pick up on this. They know that one of them is the one who is running that website and causing all this damage and everything. And so that's where it originally came from. But there is a lot of, it ties into that too.
Okay. I was not familiar with that show. I remember Bridgerton had kind of a little theme like that.
It actually was kind of also inspired by the show that I'm not going to name. Just in case
everybody just la 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 la.
So speaking of things you're fans of, are you a superhero fan? Because you referenced Barry Allen, and I will shamelessly. I had to look it up, and it's like, oh, that's the Flash's real name, like Clark Kent is for Superman.
I didn't know that. I didn't know that either.
I feel like all growing up, I was like, oh, superheroes, that's so ridiculous, blah, blah, blah. But I did not give credit to the writers of superhero stuff. And now when I watched it, I'm like, wow, there really is a lot of backstory, and there's so much more. I kind of feel like I missed out for years. I'm making up for lost time that I did not know that. So I'm wondering, are you a fan or?
As a kid, I watched all the DC cartoons. And I was really interested in that. I never really got into the comic books themselves, but I've always been a huge Superman fan. That's kind of my favorite. But But then as an adult, I've got into a lot of the DC shows that are happening now, and I've learned things like, I don't know that I would have known about Barry Allen before the TV show that's on CW now. So, you know, I've learned things since then. I was really big into Superman and Wonder Woman and Aquaman and a lot of those characters. And then as the Marvel movies came out, I started learning about the Marvel characters too. So yeah, I'm definitely a fan.
It's funny how there's like a whole DC Marvel.
I don't know if you can rivalry. See. I have a signed Smallville script back here. That
cool.
That's fun. So totally side note here. The guy who plays Superman in, I guess, in the movies, right? He's in The Witcher. Have you seen The Witcher?
Oh yeah. We're on the second season now.
Okay, we're only in the first season, but my son is the one that said, I'm like, he looks so familiar. And he's like, that's Superman. I'm like, no, I can't unsee it. He's the Witcher, but he's also Superman, but he's the Super Witcher.
He also to be Sherlock Holmes now too in the Enola Holmes series on Netflix. He's not on it a whole lot, but yeah, he's playing Sherlock Holmes.
Now that you say that, that's right. I do remember that. Okay, yeah, he's very versatile.
He's got a good agent.
Yeah.
So we have a couple questions here. One is, do you like to have quiet when you write, or do you listen to music while you write?
That has actually changed a lot. When I wrote my first books, I was always listening to like Frank Sinatra and stuff like that. I tend to need more quiet now than I used to, not just in my writing, but my reading too. I used to could read literally anywhere, and I can't do that as well anymore. So quiet. And what was the other question now again? Quiet and music.
Yeah, or music.
Yeah. Pretty much. I need to have quiet as much as you can get, you know, with barking dogs and all that going on.
Cats. Excuse me. Next question is, do you have the title of your book before you write it, or when do you come up with your book title?
It varies. Usually, no. I will have just like a working title. It was a lot easier with my first series because they all had to be music related, but starting something new, it was harder to think of, you know, what would tie in. So this title, honestly, I was down to editing and all that stuff before we figured out. My oldest helped me figure out the title. So no. And the new one that I started during NaNoWriMo, it's just Roxy #2 is all that it is for now.
Yeah, I do that too in my files.
Isn't funny how that can work? Because like my first series, my editor hardly ever changed my titles, but that's been happening more recently. And like my Moonshine series, my editor came up with that title. She didn't like what I'd thrown out, I guess, which I can't even remember what I'd said. But she's like, I thought we do the proof is in the poison. I'm like, okay.
I think some series lend themselves more to just being natural. That this is what it should be than others do.
Yeah, yeah, and some editors have preferences for how things sound or something. So another question that you've been asked over here is, do you outline?
No, absolutely not. I do have a timeline. I'll have a calendar. And, you know, certain things that I already know need to happen, I'll put on there. But otherwise, I just put it down as I go. It means I edit a lot. But for me, I think if I outlined, I'd feel like I was done. That I couldn't write it. I'm definitely.
I think a lot of pantsers kind of say that. Like that takes the fun out of it for them.
Yeah.
And I'm just the opposite. I have a pretty detailed outline, and I would be panicking to write without one. So.
It would probably save me a lot of time, but I can't. I just can't.
Yeah. Just happens the way it happens.
Yeah.
I'm somewhere in the middle. I have a pretty good roadmap, beginning, middle, end, certain plot points, but then a lot comes organically through the writing process. I call it brain thinking, because you're processing as you're actually writing.
Oh yeah.
Okay, so tell us about the Master Gardener. Are you a gardener, and how did that?
No, I'm not. I am not a gardener at all.
Does anything live in Fresno in the heat?
Not as much as it used to. I mean, even, you know, we're the fruit basket of the nation, and we're struggling with that now with all the heat and the droughts and everything. The character in the book who is the Master Gardener is based on a friend of mine who is a master gardener. And I asked him, I said, okay, Roxy's going to ask you what is a master gardener and what would you say? So I just took his words and there you go. So that's how that happened.
Do you have an interest in gardening? Do you like I have a very huge wish that I did have a green thumb, and I try, but I'm really not that good at it.
I wish I could like grow vegetables or something like that. I think that would be nice. But I usually kill things. So
Best garden I ever had was when we lived in San Jose, California. We had a rent house, and it already had kind of a prepared, slightly raised bed garden back there. And you could just throw something back there. A watermelon seed. Next thing you know, you've got watermelon.
That would be nice.
We had fruit trees all over the yard, and when they were blooming, they were beautiful. But then they'd have so much fruit that it would just be all over the ground, rotting. Yeah. Like, could not eat it all, even though we're giving it to neighbors and stuff. I loved that. I just loved having that. Like you lived on a tiny little farm, even though it was just a suburban house. But it was just really cool. But weird things would happen. Like one year, we got a whole bunch of cherries, but only for one day on the cherry tree. We picked a bunch. Next day went out there and they'd all shriveled up. And it's like, okay, what happened overnight?
Well, the birds will get to them if you don't get them. Like there's a tiny window because we had a cherry tree too in Sacramento and plums and but like the window is so small, and if you don't get them, then the birds get them.
I didn't even think about that, about the birds. I was just like, they looked shriveled up, but I bet it was just the pits. I bet they got pecked to death.
Yeah. We get a lot of frost here that farmers have to look out for and do. They'll have these big fans and cover them and all kinds of things. So that happens here. Not me personally, but the area. My dad actually was a farm worker, a migrant farm worker when as a little kid. That's how his family ended up out here.
Cool.
Wow. My husband's too. That's interesting.
My grandmother picked cotton in Texas. It's interesting how things evolve and in families.
Oh yeah.
Oh, there's Pippin is getting so big. Pippin is so big. How old is Pippin now? About 4 months. Oh, she's getting so big.
That appointment keeps getting canceled because of COVID. So we think she's closer to 5 months, but then we're supposed to start training with her last Sunday, and we couldn't because we haven't gotten her shots yet. And the lady was like, "Oh, she looks younger than that." So I'm not really sure. I'll let you know Wednesday if it doesn't get canceled.
It's just so cute. So yeah. Okay, so Lisa, did you want to ask about the cooking too? You asked about the gardening, and the cooking kind of relates to that.
Oh yeah. So Stephen is quite the chef. Love that. Mm-hmm. I love to cook. So what's your relationship with food and cooking and love the kitchen?
I probably lean more towards Roxy. I mean, I do cook. It's not something that I'm like a huge fan of doing. It depends. I enjoy, finding new recipes and trying them out when I have time. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I'm more like Roxy. I mean, honestly, if I could get takeout all the time, I probably would.
I might. We didn't have any good takeout. Not very many good places. I don't think that we can get good takeout.
We don't hear in Reedley, so that's been a little hard during the pandemic. Had to do a lot more cooking over the last 2 years.
I always feel so disappointed when we got to dinner, unless we go to Durham or someplace, where we know we're getting something good. But I always feel disappointed because I'm like, we just paid $50 for that, and I could make it better at home.
Oh yeah, that I've definitely had that happen around here. That's
yeah.
And I never think that. I think I could cook this bad at home. Make it better. Like if it's bad at restaurant. If I wanted bad food, I could have done this at home. Melissa's a really good cook, though, and she's got a great kitchen. My kitchen's about 2 feet by 2 feet.
Yeah, mine's all I need. Too.
Yeah. We keep debating about should we remodel it. It's like, why? Why would we do that? It's kind of hard to get around in there, but that's the way.
Maybe it'll inspire you. We found another Asian market. Sidebar here, because Diane, we've been to H Mart and Carrie. I don't know. H Mart is in Texas and it's out here. I have no idea if it's in California, but it's a giant Asian market. Oh. And so we found a different Asian market in Durham that's a lot closer. And so I got all of these things yesterday to make some great Asian food. So I'll make some pad thai or something.
So Maggie King said you enjoyed the descriptions of the Tower District. I did too, and Melissa did too. Yeah, you really brought it so alive. It was
Thank you.
And Tracy's asking where Bean is, Melissa.
I think he's on the couch.
He's being a party pooper.
Yeah. No, he's the grandpa of the bunch.
Yeah, so I think the murder weapon was speaking of dogs, the murder weapon was very unique in this this murder. And I have to admit something really, really stupid I did one time where I could have murdered myself.
Oh, no.
We had taken the dog somewhere, and we had actually done a training course, and they had us buy these 30-foot long leashes so that your dog, you could have them very far away from you and walk away, but still have them, kind of under control. And I can't remember, we had gone to a dog park or something, but I was carrying something. So I took the leash and just kind of put it around my neck because I thought, well, okay, that way I can attach him and have my arms one. And when I pulled it, I was like, okay, that was really stupid.
Why did you think that was a good idea? I don't know.
Around my waist, or I don't know. I don't know what I was thinking. It was just kind of like I had it in my arm, just kind of like, oh, I can just do this, I don't know. But anyway, the leash as the murder weapon was really clever. So I'm curious how you came up with that. Is that?
Well, it's harder for me to answer some of the specific questions with this book because it took so long. It just kind of came about because when I started, I didn't know who was going to die. I didn't know where they were going to die. I didn't know how they were going to die. And I wrote myself into a corner multiple times and just eventually ended up landing on this particular weapon. One of the many times through the manuscript. So it didn't start out that way. Start out being
I thought that was really good
or poison or
because then you had to figure out, okay, well, who had contact with the dog? The dog kind of became central to that. I thought that was kind of a neat way to bring the dog in. And I'd never read a book where someone had been killed with a leash. So that was,
yay. I know. Yeah, that was original. I haven't either.
That's good to hear.
Yeah. So you kind of answered the next question, which, part of it anyway, about the pantsing versus plotting aspect. But you did a great job of sort of dripping out the clues and leading us to think, well, maybe it's this person or maybe it's that person, and as Diane talked about earlier, with the theater bunch being able to sort of put on these masks and we're just not sure who's who. So I guess to revisit the idea of plotting versus pantsing, like how much did you know about who your villain was versus who you were going to bring in to be potential suspects?
When I started, like I said, I didn't even know who was going to die. I had a cast of characters and just, started playing with the story and writing it. And, it just kind of, really the killer, it was probably towards the end of the book that I decided who it was actually going to be. And then one of the multiple times going back, well, I have to put this in here and I have to do this. And, oh, maybe I should make this person look more suspicious. So it's too obvious of who it really is. And so it just came a lot to just going through it over and over again. Like I said, I wrote myself literally into a corner to where it was absolutely impossible for somebody to kill this person and get away with it. And I had to backtrack on that. It's like, okay.
Well, that is a hard thing to because you want it to be, you don't want to forecast who it is. You want it to be a surprise, but at the same time, it has to be logical and it can't all be done to the end. So you did a good job with that.
Well, thank you.
That's hard. And knowing when to meet out those little breadcrumbs, as you go along and how many to meet out. But yeah, I felt like it was really well done.
Well, thank you.
So you mentioned that this took you so long to write. Can you tell us about that?
Well, I finished up my other series about 12 years ago and started Kings of Her Life. And Kings of Her Life pretty much took up all of my writing time. There just wasn't anything else. But I really missed writing fiction. I love writing fiction. And so I decided I wanted to write something, and I kind of planted the seeds. I mentioned I introduced Roxy in the last book of the other series, but just started playing with it and really didn't get the first draft completely done until like at the beginning of the pandemic, basically. So there just wasn't time. And then I started a podcast and I start going, why did I do all these things?
Yeah, you are one of those people that just takes on, right? A busy person,
Yeah.
but you managed to get it all done, right?
Yeah.
And look who's talking. Melissa just launched a writing course.
Cool.
I think creative people always like to have a new creative outlet.
Yeah.
And, something else. Because I do remember having the thought one day, after I had done like several books in a row, and I'm like, is this going to be what I do for the rest of my life? Exactly like this, just one after the other with nothing else in between. And that's when I took a stand-up comedy class, because I was like, I need a new creative input. And I want to do improv, and I'm going to try to get Melissa to go with me. I want to do that once the pandemic is over, if it is ever over.
Yeah, exactly.
I've heard people say that they've, like my daughter took one, and she said she felt like it made her better able to think on her feet.
Oh,
and I thought I could use that skill.
My niece took one too. My niece is an architect, actually, and very right-brained and, logical, analytical, mathematical. But she was just working so much. She lived in San Francisco, still does, and took an improv class just to kind of get out of her comfort zone. And it's been her favorite thing over the years. She just loves it so much. Yeah.
So she's done more after that?
She did it for a while and then she kind of went away from it because of her job. But I think she's gone back to it recently, and she just posted something recently that she's going to try and go to an improv show once a month or something like that. So yeah, I think she's trying to get back into it just as a release. It's a great way, I think, to just let go and unplug and just access a different side of yourself, whatever, however you choose to do that.
Yeah.
And that's why, with this writing course that I'm doing, so much is creative, and even the cooking and, and the writing and all of that's very creative. And this is tapping into the opposite way, right? Into something more structured that I'm doing. And so it's just the reverse of, of my niece, for example, than moving to improv. Yeah.
Carol said the improv class has helped her as a teacher, and you have to really be ready for anything. I guess. Someone asked, how much time a day do you spend writing?
I do not have a set amount of time. I write when I can. NaNoWriMo was so helpful to me, because then I did the Sisters in Crime write-ins, and that was a huge, huge help for me to get that going. So I do not have a set schedule. I wish I did, but all the things with Kings River Life and the podcast and life, it just kind of, I'm trying to make a bigger effort to make it a higher priority now that I've got this series going.
Mm-hmm.
So
it is hard. Melissa and I find that too, just staying on a regular schedule, because it seems like there's always just something getting in the way. Sometimes I go, how did I ever have a regular job?
I know.
Where it was 8 to 5, because now it just seems like there's something I have to do every single day.
Yeah, but right, what they say, that what necessity is the mother of invention. I think it's the same idea, right? If you only have a finite period of time, you're just going to cram whatever you can into that time. And I find that when I have, unstructured time, I'm much more able to procrastinate or push things off.
Yeah.
Whereas, so that's why I'm very deadline oriented, and I work really well with deadlines, because I can just nose to the grindstone and get it done. But give me a whole week with nothing, and I will accomplish nothing.
Well, I've got the magazine deadlines and the podcast deadlines all the time, so they kind of take over.
Priority, right? Yeah, because you have to get those done.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I had all but forgotten about Excalibur. You mentioned Excalibur at the beginning, and Excalibur comes back at the end. And there's that joke about taking a gun to a knife fight. In this case, it was kind of reverse. I won't spoil that for people. But are you into swords and knives, or King Arthur?
I'm usually into King Arthur, and so that's really where that comes from. I would love the opportunity to take a fencing class or something like that. It just hasn't really been an option. But that really ties into my love of King Arthur and Camelot and all that.
Cool. So legends, lore, superheroes.
We had fencing as part of our PE curriculum in middle school.
Oh, fun!
I remember. Yeah,
nothing like that here.
How you have to stand and kind of
skip forward.
I
That's
briefly
cool.
had an editor who used to fence. She was at St. Martin's. She was my editor for about 6 or 7 months, and then she went to Simon and she went to Galley Books, and then that's part of Simon and Schuster. And then they got bought out or something. I'm not sure, but I remember like looking her up. You know, when I got transferred to her, and I'm like, okay, I got to learn something about her. And there was pictures of her fencing, and I thought, oh, that's kind of interesting.
That's cool. So that just brings up a question. Once and Future King that Roxy is all over as her favorite book. I've never read it. So is it, can you give us a little synopsis of that? Is that like a favorite book of yours?
How do I answer that question? I was looking for something to express her love of King Arthur, because it also ties into her mafia family, and that's, you know, the idea of honor is really important to her. And that book, I have a copy of the musical was a portion of that book. This is like a smaller version. And I mean, it is one of the most popular or foundation, you know, bringing that story to life. I mean, it's been told in so many different ways by so many different people. But the bigger version, which I was not able to get through, but don't tell Roxy that, is huge. And it even has like stories of Robin Hood in it, and just all kinds of different, going off in different directions and different tangents. So I just was looking for a good book for her to have. And so no, it's not. I just love the Camelot story. I mean, I've read a lot of the other shorter versions, and I love the musical. But yeah, no, I actually haven't gotten all the way through. I've got it sitting. Once I found the shorter version, I want to get through more of it. And hopefully that takes out all the side stories of Robin Hood and all that. I'm like, why is that in there?
What is interesting how we kind of, I mean, I think as people and as writers and readers, we kind of define people sort of by their literary tastes. And I know I always kind of think about that when I'm thinking of my characters, like, what genres would they read? What would be on their nightstand? So I think it's kind of funny that, you know, we do that, you know, like I tend to have, you know, sometimes my characters in their leisure time, they're reading something, and what is it, you know?
She's also a big Sherlock Holmes fan.
Yeah. So you you mentioned Agatha Christie too, right? So like, did you grow up with Nancy Drew and Agatha Christie and all of that? Where does your love of mysteries come from? Because that's your big focus with King's River Life too.
I not Nancy Drew. I actually, it was my younger brother who read Nancy Drew and introduced me to Sherlock Holmes when I was a teenager, and Agatha Christie. So it's all his fault. But I never looked back. I've always loved mysteries ever since then. I'm a huge Sherlock Holmes fan. I love Sherlock Holmes.
What's your favorite Sherlock Holmes duo? You know, Benedict Cumberbatch and Morgan Freeman.
Well, I love Jeremy Brett. I think is the most authentic Sherlock Holmes. But I love Benedict's. I think it's a good modern take on. And I do love Benedict too. Those are my two Holmes, right there.
Not Robert Downey Jr. and Jude Law.
No. My family will tell you. We were sitting there watching those. That's not Sherlock Holmes. That's not Sherlock Holmes. All the way through. I think it drove them crazy.
Yeah.
It's funny now. Sometimes, some of those fits are just like, that's not a fit. It's for a peg
and it was nothing on them. You know, I love Robert Downey Jr. Jude Law made a great Watson, but it just wasn't, you know, the script, it wasn't authentic to the original. And I tend to be a stickler in that way.
I love Morgan Freeman as Watson to Benedict's Sherlock. I love him in anything, though.
I love them. Like I said, it's pretty much tied. For a classic Sherlock Holmes, it's Jeremy Brett. But otherwise, Benedict's tied, though. I love their portrayal, and I love the actors. So
didn't Will Ferrell and what's the guy that he did?
Yeah, they did kind of a comedy one recently. I did not see that.
I'm thinking I saw a few minutes of it and that it was horrible. I
don't know. Will Ferrell, very hit and miss for me.
Yes,
you know, like Elf, totally. Most Elf everything else, no.
He was good in Stranger Than Fiction. I really like that.
Yes, that was a good one too.
I like him as a dramatic actor.
Yeah,
I
He's so
find that a lot. I find a lot of the big famous comedy actors, I like them better when they do something serious.
Jim Carrey. Yeah, I like Jim Carrey.
Robin
And
Williams
Steve
too.
Carell.
Oh yeah.
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 I think they have greater depth. You know, it's hard to
Yeah.
There's
So
a
we
question.
have
What's your favorite? Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Oh yeah, I was gonna say, Lecha has a question. What is your favorite fairy tale? Going back to the discussion about Robin Hood and Camelot and all of that.
Well, if Camelot, if that counts, then it would be King Arthur. If you're thinking of more classic ones, maybe Beauty and the Beast. I like that story a lot.
Yeah, that's a great one. I love that one just because Belle comes, is smart.
Yes.
Bookish.
Loves books.
Yeah. And Valerie is with you. No Robert Downey Jr. as Sherlock.
Yay.
So you
He's a
got
great Iron Man, though.
What?
He's a great Iron Man in Marvel, though.
Oh yeah, there's something about him. He's got that je ne sais quoi. He's just got charisma. Yeah. And especially I think as he's gotten older, he's just better to me.
He also had to get his life.
Yeah,
too. I think that helped a lot.
And it comes through like he's just got this mischievousness, but he also has years that he's put in and a little bit of hard knocks and stuff that comes through. So anyway, little Robert Downey Jr. love.
I did enjoy him as Charlie Chaplin, though. And that
what?
As Charlie Chaplin.
Oh yeah, gosh, I haven't seen that in so long.
Yeah,
I haven't seen that.
That was before he got his life together.
Yeah, I think there was a lot of before, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so what you mentioned a couple of times your other series. So can you tell us a little bit about that and how it all started?
Well, in my early 20s, I started taking a creative writing class. I mean, I'd been trying to write a book forever, basically. And I couldn't come up, I had Steven, I tried to make something with him and it wasn't happening. And everybody kept telling me, well, you're a gospel singer. Why don't you write a book about a gospel singer? And I was like, why would anybody want to read that? But I finally gave in, and that's what my main character is. There's 4 books, and Steven is her boyfriend, and they don't end up together. Another character comes in. I ended that series, like I said, about 12 years ago. But yeah, that was as soon as I started writing something that I knew, everything just clicked. So
that leads me to another kind of related question. So the other series came about because you created this gospel singer. So how did this series come about? Was it that Roxy inspired it? Did she come first, or did the idea of this, mafia family in California and the Central Valley, how did it come to be?
The family was already there with Steven because he's her cousin.
Right.
But originally it was going to be an animal rescue focused book. And so it started with her in air running a pocket pet rescue with pet rats and hamsters and all the little guys and guinea pigs. And her best friend and roommate had a black cat rescue, and they ran them both out of their house. And so that's where it started out as. And when I came back to taking it more seriously and just decide, okay, I want to do this. Like I said, there were so many, when I first started the animal rescue idea, it was not out there at all. And there were so many by the time I really was ready to take it seriously that I wanted to do something else and go in a different direction. So her foundation was there, but and came up with the idea of taking her to the Tower District and starting over. And so that's kind of how that kind of came together.
It's so hard to find.
When did you know she was going to be cousin to Steven?
Fairly soon, when I started creating her to be in the animal rescue book, I wanted to kind of tie in because she's in the last book of the other series, and she's introduced as his cousin. And the main character is out on a road touring, and they go where she's at. And that's where where her character is introduced. And she actually helps investigate in that one and has some chapters of her own. So that's kind of how the connection came, is I had to bring Stephen with me. So there you go. So he gets to be the cousin this time instead of the PI boyfriend.
So are those books on Amazon? I was trying to find them. I didn't see.
Not really. There are some people who like put up used copies. There's some people trying to sell them for like a lot of money on eBay, which is crazy. They were with one of the very first publish on demand book publishers, and it was not a positive experience. And so that's why I ended up ending the series and ending my relationship with them. The last book in the series I self-published so that I could have an ending to my series, but I had gotten back the rights to all of them. I've thought about trying to put them together to get them out there again, but it would be such a large amount of work.
Well, so, it's hard to know sometimes, yeah, because I have so many things that are about a third of the way done that either kind of fizzled or whatever, and sometimes I think, oh, should I go revisit that idea? But sometimes it's like whatever the thing is that's keeping you going and pulling you forward. Sometimes that's kind of
the last book is still up there, only in print. It's called The Final Note. That one's still up there, but there's a part of the mystery that carries over from the book before that. So I don't know if I would encourage people to just go read that. You might be a little lost. But yeah, because I self-published it, that's still technically out there. But
well, maybe someday.
Maybe.
You mentioned doing NaNoWriMo with Sisters in Crime, and I just wanted to mention I'm the new publicity chair for the Triangle chapter of Sisters in Crime.
because
we have a self-publishing workshop on February 12th, which is a Saturday from 9 to 3:15 Eastern Time. And there's 4 speakers. One's going to talk about book covers. One's going to talk about, 2 of them are basically going to talk about making more money, how to make more money, how to make your website work for you. Because I know we've got some aspiring writers and writers in the audience tonight. And the other person is going to just talk about whether, traditional or self-publishing, which is better for you and for which projects and that kind of thing. So, okay, so we've talked about what you've done in the past. What about what's next for you?
Well, like you said, I started the next book during NaNoWriMo, and then it kind of slowed down after that because of just everything else. But that will be next, is the second book in the series. I had hoped to get it out this year, but I think that might be just a little bit too ambitious. So it should be out next year for sure. I can't see any reason why it wouldn't be. And this one, unless something changes, it's set at Halloween. And there is a theater aspect in it again.
Oh, cool.
They're going to be doing a Edgar Allan Poe story.
Oh, fun.
So that's
perfect for Halloween.
Yeah.
And Halloween's a good, get people in costume. And Melissa's book that came out in December that we did had people in costume at a Dickens party, and you don't know, there's several people wearing similar costumes, and that kind of had a nice,
that's fun.
It lent itself to great puzzlement because you don't know who's who, right?
True. I may have to rethink this.
So will all of the books in the series have a theater element? Is that part of your plan?
I think that will, because there's been such a positive reaction to that. And honestly, if they're set in the tower, they kind of almost have to. I mean, half the people who live there are involved in theater. And definitely the biggest theater company in the area. The only one that's actually it's a regional theater as opposed to and it's not a nonprofit, is in the Tower District. So I think it would be hard not to at least have it involved in some form. It's not going to be the primary focus like it was in the first book, because it's actually going to be kind of like a book festival weekend kind of event. But then it ties in, it has the the Edgar Allan Poe show is also a part of the weekend. So it is involved. And then you'll see a lot of the same characters and a bunch of new characters.
Well, I have to say, one of the things I've missed the most during COVID is not going to live theater.
Yeah.
Because we used to go to the Durham Performing Arts Center. Basically, if we had even just any bit of interest in anything that came through town, we would go because it's super easy to get in and out. There's good restaurants over there. It's just always, excuse me, always a fun night. Like Melissa and I went with our husbands to see the Donna Summer musical. We went to a lot of bands too, REO Speedwagon and stuff like that. But we saw Come From Away and just all kinds of stuff. And
Doobie Brothers.
It's just kind of stunned to not be able to go to live shows. And
I've actually, the theater company that I mentioned, they started doing some shows again in, I want to say in the fall, a little bit before that, maybe late summer. And my youngest has been in them, but they've been very diligent. Everybody has to be vaccinated that's in the cast and the crew. And now everybody has to be vaccinated who attends, and they have to be masked. And they still got hit with it. My son just got back from having COVID.
Oh,
so
no.
They still, I mean, so as careful as they're being, they've still gotten hit with the Omicron. Before then, they were managing okay. And I did go and see his shows, masked, of course. But that's the only theater that I've seen other than streaming theater. A lot of the companies around here and the colleges did a lot of streaming theater in the last couple of years.
Yeah, so did the high schools around here.
Yeah.
They did the same with their choir and their theater.
My daughter's theater group did that, and they were so clever about how they did some of this stuff. Like she had written a play where it was 4 girls at brunch, and they all got the same backdrop, so it looked like they were sitting in a booth.
Nice.
They were really all in their own houses, zooming from their own place, But,
Yeah,
these things now are calculated risks. We went to see Wicked recently, and they made you show your COVID card. I mean, that's one of the few things that we've seen. And we went to see Bill Engvall in a place in Asheville, and we had to show our COVID card to get into.
I was going to go. They have Broadway shows that come through in Fresno, but the first one that came through, the other reviewer in the area went to it, and he was not impressed with how well they were enforcing all of that. And I was like, no, I don't need to go.
Yeah, calculated risk. You got to evaluate your risk tolerance there. Yeah.
I've seen 2 movies in the last year. and then, like I said, Omicron came and like, okay, I'm done with that again.
Well, Saturday Night Live, they even did a skit on how, Spider-Man came out, and then 2 weeks later there was the, spike, and it's like,
Yep.
They were making kind of fun of it, but I think there's probably some truth to that.
Oh yeah. One of the 2 movies I saw was Spider-Man, but we were very calculated and we picked a time when we knew there's going to be the least amount of people there. Picked one of the few movie theaters who seemed to really be enforcing things, and double masked and went in, went out. So
scary. Melissa and I have an event this weekend in Alabama, and I'm kind of, part of me wants to say I'm kind of surprised I didn't go virtual, but they are smaller events, and they're just designed to be more in person. Kind of one of them is a luncheon. But yeah, it's a little scary because Alabama's numbers are really, really bad. But we want to back out. But we signed up for these things months ago. It's like,
I'm going to have a local one at a local bookstore at the end of February. And when I scheduled, I was saying, by February, everything will be fine. But it is, instead of a talk, it's basically, I'm just going to be sitting at a table by the front door, mask. So I'm thinking that won't be too bad.
Yeah.
Well, we had another event we were going to do in Virginia, and that one did go virtual. So they decided to postpone that as a live event. So, I mean, I think it's up to the event coordinators how they want to do it, but it's not surprising that things are closing down again.
Yep.
Unfortunately.
We have a comment from Valerie. I went to a concert before Christmas without restrictions and came home fine. Went to BMV, is maybe that DMV, Bureau of Motor Vehicle, yes, 2 weeks ago in a nearly empty office and came home with COVID.
Oh gosh.
You just never know. Now they're saying most of us will get it. I guess that's, we don't want to talk about COVID.
No.
Yeah.
I shouldn't have brought it up. I'm sorry.
That will not be in my books. I can tell you that for a fact.
Well,
Yeah, I think most people agree they don't want to be reading about COVID or viruses.
Yeah.
Want to escape. Yeah, it was funny how at the beginning of this, everybody was watching pandemic movies and all that. I guess it was
me.
kind of maybe get an understanding. Yeah. It's
I
like,
thought it was
Too
interesting.
close to home.
I thought it was interesting how TV has handled it. I mean, some shows just ignored it completely, and some just kind of, it was almost like it was a token thing. They'll like have a mask in one scene. Okay, I'm wearing a mask, and then they'll do another scene and there isn't, and it's like, yeah. And now I think they've decided, okay, it's over. You hear people talk about back during the pandemic. So yeah, it's been interesting.
Yeah, it sure has.
well, I know you're going to post all your links and everything when we're done, but can you kind of tell people where to find you?
My website is mysteryrat.com.
Perfect.
On Twitter, it's at mysteryrat. Instagram, I kind of just do everything under the Kings River Life one. So it's just at KRL Magazine. And Facebook, it's just Lorie Lewis Ham. I do my promoting through all the Kings River Life stuff. We have a Mystery Rats Maze Facebook group and a Kings River Life Facebook page. So that's me.
Well, yeah, make sure and post those in the comments, though, so people can find you.
And the book is on Amazon, barnesandnoble.com, and Kobo. And if by some small chance anybody's local watching, Book Barn in Clovis, which is where I'll be doing my book signing in February, they've got copies.
Oh, awesome!
Well,
great.
It was great, and it was different, which I always love it when I read something and I feel like this has a different feel to it. You know,
that's good. I like,
yeah, and there's a lot going on, and Roxy's a really interesting person with lots of interest and things going on. Yeah, I really enjoyed it too.
Thank you.
Yeah, she's a neat
person. Thank you for being here with us, Lorie. It's so great to be able to celebrate your book after everything that you've done for us with our books too, especially.
Well, thank you.
Yeah. Be sure to let us know when your next one comes out.
I will, definitely.
The word. So. All right. Well, good night, everybody.
Good night.
Good night.
Out.